Okay. You had said, I think you met with some folks back in your home state, and later on told the Des Moines Register that I knew there was going to be some fireworks at the hearing, but there was a lot more than I thought there was going to be. Really? I mean, these were pretty well telegraphed, or were you just surprised how many protesters were there and how many were able to act up the way they did?
I wouldn't call them protesters. I would say that they're people that honestly disagree with whether or not Kavanaugh ought to be on the Supreme Court. I happen to agree, based upon the hearings we had last week, that he ought to be on the Supreme Court. And there's people that just don't disagree with it, and they disagree strongly, and they came to my town meetings. They did what representative governments ought to do. I was doing what representatives of people of their particular state ought to do, listen to them, answer their question, and it was a kind of a normal town meeting, except just a little more noisy than usual.
Yeah, it was that. You kept your cool, though, sir. I give you that. You know, about the pressure around these hearings, this crowdfunding website that's trying to, I guess, compel Susan Collins to go ahead and vote against Judge Kavanaugh. It's raising money, better than $1 million, that if she were to vote for him, they're going to, unleash that money to make sure in 2020 she's not reelected. What do you think of that?
Well, of course, that's politics in America. Both the left and the right do that. But I think she showed her very strong independence, representing the people of Maine, been very independent. She's been very independent within the Republican caucus. She's an outstanding senator, and she issued a forceful statement abhorring that whole process. And I can't speak anymore. She spoke louder than I can about it. But I tell you, I've known her and working with her ever since she came to the House of Representatives in 1978. She's a person of great respect and great principle, and she expressed that principle yesterday.
You know, Senator, I'm wondering what you make of Mitch McConnell's comments the other day concerning Republicans keeping control. Forget about the House, the Senate, saying it's going to be a knife fight to keep the Senate. Do you agree that even the Senate itself could be in doubt?
No, I don't believe it's in doubt, but I think the president or the leader of the Senate, Republicans, is saying the right thing. You don't know what the next 6 weeks hold, and you want to put everybody on their toes. And I think that's what he was doing, and he should do it. And I think by doing that and getting people working harder, raising more money, that he may even increase the Senate majority.
So are you surprised that Republicans are in this position with the strong economy, certainly the strong markets, but maybe it's the trade war, maybe it's the ongoing disruptions the president's been having with the Bob Woodward book and this anonymous editorial in the New York Times? What has you guys on defense?
Well, I don't know that we're on the way you characterize it. I don't accept that. But even if I did, I think that it's good to be very nervous about your reelection. I think that's a good posture.
But are you surprised, Senator? I'm sorry I wasn't clear that given the strong numbers, I think even Democrats would agree these are strong numbers you've got for the economy, that the party, and again, the polls could be wrong, and they often are. They were certainly wrong in 2016, to your point, that you could still lose the House, even with that, potentially the Senate. Yeah. It is weird, isn't it?
I think the president is taking the right course by suggesting that if the Democrats do take over it, there's impeachment's a possibility. And if impeachment's a possibility, then this basically ends the revolutionary outcome of the 2016 election, because the minute that starts, then the effectiveness of everything this president's trying to do, and all he's trying to do is what he said he was going to do in the election. He's trying to carry that out, and he's being pretty successful at it, particularly on the economy, that it's going to come to a halt. And I think if he talks about it enough and they realize that his progress is going to be stalled, then that makes a big difference. And I think the president should follow what he did the last 2 weeks of his election. He was very much on script, very disciplined in how he approached it. If he can be that same discipline between now and the midterm elections, I think he's going to improve the Republicans' chances of holding the House of Representatives. By the way, I don't think it's in jeopardy, but prevent as much loss as he can.
All right, so that, I assume, means to cool it on the tweeting.
Every way he communicates with the American people.
Okay. Senator, thank you very, very much. It's always a pleasure, sir, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.